there, it's Polly here, back from Burlesque with Mr. Snoots, who isn't back from Burlesque, he does belly dancing. But anyway, I want to cover some more transmasculine identities. That is, people who were assigned female at birth, but who conceived of themselves as male and who lived consistently and passionately in the male gender. Now, there are many, many instances of people kind of cross-dressing for convenience, female to male, often because there was a task to do, like someone cross-dressed and temporarily presented as male in order to get a medical degree, or in order to join the army for a conflict, or indeed to be male in an area when troops swept through an area so they wouldn't be raped. Many, 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 many examples of this. But I think I kind of like about a lot of the transmasculine folk whose names have kind of rung down through history is that these people kick ass. They just don't go out there and become something. They become the absolute best at something. These people were world movers. So I want to talk to you today about a Mexican gentleman. His name was Amelio Robles Ávila. Pardon my Spanish for this, I do not speak Spanish. I do, however, speak some Nahuatl, which has a somewhat similar pronunciation. But, so, Amelio was born in 1889 and lived to be 95. 95. So, lived right through all the troubles of the 20th century and ended up dying in the 80s, so 1980s. So, well done you. Now, Amelia was born in Xochipala in, Guerrero. Guerrero's a, the Aztec history degree kicking in here, that's an archaeological site. But was born to a rural family, relatively well off. Joined like a Catholic, what do they call them? Catholic confessional that was supposed to train young girls up to be, young women, e.g. lots of domestic training. But Amelio picked up male skills by preference to all others and had a huge delight in breaking horses, that cowboy stuff, riding, shooting, hunting, was very skilled in weapons, a crack shot, an absolutely crack shot, brilliant horse rider, brilliant horse breaker and tamer, and lived that life. Now, this was an era when Mexico was in the grip of a series of civil wars. Now, for those of you who aren't kind of up on it, what happened, you might remember that kind of at the time of the American Civil War, the Europeans basically decided that Mexico's run by brown people and that's just wrong. So we'll just impose a European emperor on them. So they found an Austrian princeling who was sitting around doing sweet bugger all, and they just decided this guy's going to be Emperor of Austria. The French backed this, but so did the Austrians, and so many others poured money in this to do this absolutely monstrous, vicious, murderous invasion of Mexico. And the European powers tried to take over Mexico. The Mexican resistance managed to throw them out. All should have been well. However, the Republican, not American Republican, actual Republican, government eventually kind of fell prey to military juntas and became controlled by ultra-wealthy oligarchs who ran the country as an authoritarian state and designed entirely to transfer money from the poor into the coffers of the rich. Does that sound in any way familiar to anybody? However, this triggered off a series of civil wars, and this was the world that Amelio was born into. So, in his town of Xochipala, there was one of these revolutionary anti-governmental groups. Who were they? The Maderistas? Is that who he was with? Maderistas. They followed Maderas, who was one of the revolutionary anti-junta fighters. Was actually it was a club. They were the treasurer. But pretty early on, Amelio was sent off to the East Coast to try and get money from oil companies to fund the revolution. Somewhere in that trip, at about the age of 24, Amelia, upon basically returning from this mission, decided that they were now going to live publicly and openly and very aggressively as male. They conceived of themselves as male, and so Amelia became Amelio, truly and in public. So he managed to carve an absolute path of glory. Now, Amelio became a renowned fighter in the revolution, was apparently murderously efficient. In later years, when Amelio was applying for veterans' benefits, was found to have 6 bullet wounds on him from this era of fighting. He was renowned for not only as an incredibly cunning and incredibly brave leader, but for striding through fire, usually fighting with a pistol in his right hand and holding a cigar in the left. I just love the image. There were actually some other trans men in the region that he knew and cooperated with. There were a couple who were like explosive technicians, and it was a very interesting era. But he rose to actually be a colonel, colonnello, not colonel A, so his revolutionary organisation gave him the male appellative for colonel, recognised him as male, and he rose through the ranks to lead a considerable chunk of a revolutionary army. As the alliances shifted and changed, continued to fight and kept on fighting until I think 1919. Oh, ginger beer, nectar of the gods. Now, during the course of this, Amelio was also very, very masculinely upfront about his attraction to women. Wooed, courted and ran about with a great many women extremely publicly, and in fact started a pretty famous 10-year relationship during the revolution with a woman, and they were incredibly happy together. When the fighting died down, Amelio settled in a town. A bunch of men decided to basically try and mob him, to tear his clothes off, to expose him as a woman. He shot 2 of them dead on the spot and wounded several others. Amelio, cheers, man, cheers. All power to you. Through the rest of his life, he said, if you misgender me, I will shoot you. And apparently kept that promise. There are photos of Amelio through into World War II era, because he went from a revolutionary to being in the Mexican army as a colonel. He received a huge number of decorations, both for campaign medals, but also orders for bravery and so forth. When he finally retired, he put in for military retirement pensions, and there was a little bit of a contretemps there, because it was wondered, essentially, do we pay him as male or as female? However, his birth certificate had actually been amended by the president to say male. That solved it. Bang! You get male retirement pay and full male honours. So he seems to have lived a life as a rural gentleman from that point onwards, married, adopted a child, lived a very happy married life as a man, as a local civic leader, and seems to have been a real founder of that region, seems to have been very, very involved in rebuilding after the chaos of all the civil wars. So, what an interesting person. There was a ridiculous kind of rumour that, on his deathbed, he asked to be buried dressed as a woman so that, God would recognise him. This is a lie. It is an absolute and complete lie. And we know it's a lie because for the last year of his life he could not speak, nor could he write. Therefore he could not make any deathbed requests. No. He was buried in his military uniform. But the weird thing is, buried under his female name. So, to this day in his hometown, there is a military gravestone that dead names him as Amelia. And this continues in this area. It actually makes me really smegging angry because, to me, it is the ultimate sign of disrespect. This person fought tooth and nail valiantly to bring freedom to Mexico and to establish a democratic state. Was recognised at the time as male, not female, lauded as male, not female. Everyone is giving them male suffixes to titles, and then they're misgendered in death. There are schools in the area which are founded in his name, but under the female name, Amelia. Libraries and museums under the name Amelia. It really is incredibly disrespectful. I want to go to Mexico for many reasons. I don't know if I can safely, being trans and all. However, this is one area I would like to go. I'd like to pay my respects to the gentleman. One of which is I'm willing to pay for a new gravestone for the guy. Absolutely. Why was this attempt at reclamation? Essentially, in later years, as again more right-wing voices took control, it was essentially unacceptable that someone could have lived a life as a man when they were as a woman. It is the patriarchy's revenge. Essentially, we're going to dead name you, and we're going to dead name you everywhere we can, because instead of a very successful man, we want to grind it in that this was a woman. This was a woman. Yeah, Amelio would have shot them. I love Amelio to bits. What a life. That image of this amazing trans man in the thick of battle. And I mean, these guys are doing train heists. These guys are, lobbing dynamite at federales, stealing gold shipments to fund their revolution, riding off into the sunset on a horse. What a fantastic image. Made such a huge contribution to the revolution and to helping Mexico become a modern state. And despite the misnaming, their presence as someone that schools, that museums, that libraries and all these sorts of things are named after shows an immense amount of respect and reverence in the area that they came from. I just wish that they were not being dead named. So anyway, again, this is another happy story. Once upon a time in a war-torn land, someone was born a little girl, was forced into a weird Catholic cult that told them that their entire life was to obey men, raise babies, and to be very meek and, cook. Said to hell with that and went out riding on the range, shooting pistols, shooting rifles, roping horses, breaking stallions. And then as revolution swept through the place, not only just plunged in there immediately from the very beginning as like a treasurer, as a fundraiser, going off to extort oil companies, etc., but ended up as a colonel leading a huge band of fighters through some of the most brutal fighting of the early 20th century. Came out of it at the other end smiling, married the woman that they loved, raised a child and lived to be 95 years old and die in their own bed. Die in their own bed, a regional hero, loved and respected. I wish we could have met. I would have loved to have hoisted a drink with you, mate. You are truly a gem. Anyway, this is another happy transgender story. We have always been here, and we have made our mark on history. We weren't invisible. We were there, and we made a difference. Cheers, everybody. Mr. Snoots wishes you all much love. Take care of your personal safety, particularly in places like the USA and UK, which are, frankly, raging hellholes. Much love from over here in the strange endless piece of Australia. I shall finish my ginger beer and wish you all much love. Cheers, everyone.